Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back. I gave a little bit of a break there on Monday since I had done that random midnight movie presentation on Saturday for Late Night with the Devil, which I hope you enjoyed, and if so, I also hope you headed on over to Shudder to check that one out. But for this entry, I wanted to take a little bit of a departure from horror, and no, it's not an 80s one either, though you've seen the title, so you no doubt know I'm speaking of the 2012 film Sushi Girl. Now, I'd seen this film about 10 or 12 years ago, but I didn't really have much memory of it. It was one of those very late night viewings, and I've been wanting to revisit this, give it a second chance, because all I really remembered was enjoying it and really needing to give it a second chance. So I recently came across it on Blu-ray from Sound Exchange. I got it used for about $5 and was ready to dive in and finally give it that second chance. But first off, the synopsis. Upon his release from prison, Fish is brought to an abandoned restaurant by his old associate, Duke, to celebrate his newfound freedom. However, there's unfinished business that Duke is determined to solve. So that's first, was that synopsis. Second, let's first talk about the cast. Some of them are in major roles and some are in smaller, but we have Tony Todd, yes, Candyman himself is in this. Mark Hamill, he was in some movies about wars and stars, or like starring wars, something along those lines. Noah Hathaway, who I remember especially from Neverending Story. We also have James Duval, who's in Independence Day, and Donnie Darko, among other things. But we also have Michael Biehn, Danny Trejo, Jeff Fahey, David Dastmalchian, who is also in that Late Night with the Devil, and the legend himself, Sonny Chiba. Truly a stacked cast, you know, whether their role is big or small, they all do really great in this crime-related story. Now, as for the unfinished business that they mention in the synopsis, it involves a heist gone wrong. One of them was taken into custody and put behind bars, and when he gets out, they want to know where the object of their heist ended up, since at the end of that heist, they all left empty-handed. And now, as far as the title, Sushi Girl, there is a sushi girl in this, laid out like a plate for them to eat sushi off of, with the more exotic of the piece to be kind of closer to the more erogenous sections as they are kind of plated on her. In this situation, within it, she needs to remain absolutely still and unaffected by what she sees, which isn't much given she's laying down, but especially by what she hears, an intense interrogation. And by intense, I mean intense, loud, violent, and throughout we get these flashes between various others in this group kind of taking turns interrogating this character, as also these flashbacks to what had happened in the planning, execution, and failure of the heist. So most of this has kind of like a ship in the bottle kind of feel, as it's all taking place in one location, an Asian-themed restaurant. It feels very confined and intense. So when we do have a flashback, everything feels a bit more open and one's able to breathe, only to have that stress of the heist kind of take over, which makes it almost welcoming when they switch back to the present day in the restaurant, until that next round of interrogation takes course here. But as for our characters, it is strange for me to see Noah Hathaway as growing up. I never really followed his career after Neverending Story, but he did a great job. And they even did a little call out to his Neverending Story character in that there's a scene in this where there is a van and it has a logo of a fictitious plumbing company on the side labeled Falcor Plumbing. So that's a nice little call out. But especially when it comes to Mark Hamill, you know, Luke Skywalker himself. Well, Luke Skywalker was never in the room. Basically, I think maybe it's partially because of the voice that he uses, this accent, which is a mix between something very flamboyant and mixed with possibly like a New York gangster sound, plus the fact that his character is very violent in the way that he interrogates. You know, this is something that I'd never seen him do before. Never seen anything, you know, since he did Star Wars that was anywhere along these lines. So any thoughts of Luke Skywalker or anything just melted away. I just took him in as this amazing character. There were only a few times where I was reminded of any of his previous work, and that was possibly some cases where I kind of caught hints of the Joker in his voice. And the same thing happened with Candyman himself, Tony Todd. He's one of those actors who I frequently forget what all he's in, because anything that he's in, any aspects of Candyman or that association usually just melt away and subside with whatever character he's playing. I mean, it's called acting, but you know, there are some cases where really good actors can really have a hard time not being associated with some of their more famous works. But he came across as strong, menacing, and incredibly smart, very dangerous. Any previous works of his, I did not have an issue disconnecting from. It was just awesome to see Tony Todd in such a powerhouse performance. And even as for our little sushi girl here, though through the smallest of movements and reactions, she brought a lot to this. somehow just laying down, she was able to bring in a really good performance. Now, I won't go into too much more detail about those characters because I don't want to get into any spoiler territory, but everybody did a really great job with this one. And the overall feel of this really feels like a 90s indie crime film of some sort. Perhaps like with some inspiration from films like Reservoir Dogs, maybe a little bit of Bottle Rocket in there, something along those lines. So if you enjoyed those kinds of 90s crime films, especially like the independent stuff, you'll likely enjoy this one. And in fact, one of the reasons why I decided to make a video for this one after watching this film, besides needing to give this one that second chance since it had been so long, since I hadn't really paid attention to it back in the day, was because a friend of mine who is all about those 90s films along those lines had never even heard of this one. It seemed to just slip right under the radar with a lot of people. So this one had kind of serves as a second chance for me, so I can really take it all in, as well as one to talk about as one of those hidden gems that I rarely hear any mention about, which is truly a disservice because, just in the performances alone in this film, it's really more than worth checking out. And speaking of checking out, thanks for checking out this latest second chance entry here for a 2012 film which feels like a 90s retro review due to its style for Sushi Girl from 2012. Starring many notable people. A really great film which I rarely hear mentioned anywhere, which at the time of this video is available of course on disc, which is how I ended up watching it, as well as on Amazon Prime and a few paid rental and ad-supported services out there, so check that Just Watch app and find out if it's on a service that you have access to. Anyways, that's about all that I have for this quick little video here. Thanks for coming by and for sticking around to the end, as it really helps out a lot, as does subscribing, which I just crossed that 500 subscriber mark goal that I had. So thank you for that. That's all I got for this one, and I will see you in the next one.